I know. You're live. It says I'm live. I don't know how the colorization is doing for you folks, but it's kind of funky and a little bit different than it was before. I don't know. Let's see if we can get this. I talk about my shirts all the time, and I've got one of them on right now. Everything you know is wrong. Anyway, those shirts are for sale. As always, I want to show the old X-Files poster. I do want to believe. Good morning. I'm going to try some audio clips here and see if we can get this working. This is just a test and experiment this morning. As usual, my eyes are hardly open, and let's see if we can do this. I'm feeding from one computer to another. And guess what?
Tony's Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form. Good morning.
All right, I'm assuming that that is working and that you heard that. I'm going to put the glasses on. For regular fans of the show, yeah, we talked about that yesterday. Check my other shows and you'll know all about that. Today's shows featured basically. I'm going to read this thing that's on my that I've written in front of the in my description, and for those who never seem to go down, you constantly hear YouTubers talking about scroll down or look at the links in my description or whatever. Well, anyway, this show is about the pivotal changes in Western civilization, how we live, communicate, are corralled like cattle, and what role the media and advertising play in this paradigm shift and real-life drama that is unfolding right before our eyes. And that's the title today. And of course, below that, you'll find a link to my sites, google.com/view Tony Caravan site. And again, if I'm moving around, it's because I've got this primitive chair. But I'm going to get into this. I got to play through this, try to figure out. I'll take these glasses off right now. I shouldn't need them necessarily. I probably don't even need this overcoat. It was a little bit cold in here earlier this morning. But I did want you to get that everything is wrong. These are nice shirts. I don't know if you could see through the video, but it's like it looks like it has a texture on it, but it's built into it. I mean, really quality shirts, and they're only, they're usually on sale. Like this one, I think I paid, excuse me, paid less than $20 for it. Like I might have even been 17. I don't even know. But actually, I'm a little bit wrong about that. It is actually still kind of a little cool. In my neck of the woods, here in the outskirts of town, like I said, let me get comfortable for this live webcast and push this up and down on there. Now that I know everything isn't backwards, yesterday was my first experiment with using. It wasn't my first experiment using YouTube Live, but it was the first time in a long time that I tried to do a full-length show. And like I said, with today, it's interesting to. I'm assuming these sounds came through, and if they did, I still don't know how I'm going to get titles over top of this, but I'm going to look into post-production on this today and see what I can do. I got up early again. Like I said, I'm in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States. It's 5:53 in the morning here. I'm drinking a Diet DP caffeinated drink. I've got a cap below me. And I was looking for some stuff to show, some of the things I did, because I always refer to stuff in my videos, and I have there's got to be well over 100 videos now on my website. And back in 2002, I actually, this is, my YouTube channel is called Rock Flux. It's a name I've had set up for, literally since the beginning. And I actually was putting out a print publication. I found a copy from like 2002. 10 things you can do to resist the New World Order, finding shelter, conspiracy theories defined. But, what was interesting in, stuff about this, like, living, and this is even before I got this house. So this was like, and I used to have like, calendar planners. I've always been publishing books since I was a reason, since I was young, like tiny young. I have a thing in here, conspiracy theories defined, which is interesting. But I don't go into that. But I graduated out of that to do like these city guides. Now I want to show you. So I'm sharing this. This video has a little bit to do with advertising. It probably will deal with like some propaganda and stuff like that as well. Not my propaganda, but like how you defeat it. But I went from the concept of doing this into like dining and entertainment type guides, city guides. I mean, I've been publishing these since I was like 18 years old. I used to do them down at the shore. And then I came up with this concept. So this looks kind of like that thing I showed you that, has a staple in it, and you page through it. But I said, why do that? Let's try something different. So you take this, I'm just giving this free idea out for somebody. So it looks like a magazine, but when you open it up, it still looks like a magazine, right? So someone can read it, like this, right? But then it opens up again, and now it almost looks like a section of a newspaper, right? If you can grasp that. And then, in this particular version, if I just go through it, I've got everything from TV listings to movies that are playing to concerts and events, and of course there's advertisers in there. That's how you make your money. But if that wasn't enough, right, that now you're looking at it and it's almost like a newspaper thing, you open it once again and it becomes this like wall poster calendar that you could post on your wall, and each of these squares is a day and what's happening that day. Now, isn't that cool? And then you just fold the thing back down and it's just a magazine, size thing, and it's made of paper. So you could take this and just put it in your pocket or fold it up, put it in your back pocket. A woman could put it in her purse. Anyway, that's something I just like to share with somebody. People just don't think about stuff like that. And of course, my latest book is a full-fledged, it's not a long book, but this is the book I recommend you get. If you're watching my videos on a regular basis, I would recommend getting that. My face looks a little washed out today. I realized that. Colorization's strange. The lighting's different because I have this other computer on, the one that I was using here to play. Good morning. Good morning. That kind of thing. And I think you heard that. You never know.
Tony's Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
Good morning. So, good morning. It's Tuesday, and it's Wednesday actually now, and it's the 10th of February. I guess for those following a certain pop cultural event, the politics of pop culture, this would be day 2 of that farcical thing. I'm not going to get into that here. I didn't watch because I don't have a TV. I mean, I have TVs, televisions, the physical HD TV, various flat screen things, around my house. But I have no service. I dropped my television services. I've spoken many times. I'm just not interested in. I'm no longer interested in politics as pop culture, and even as news. I don't think there is any news, to be found on television at all right now. As far as I'm concerned, this is TV, and I'm just going to be one of these guys that's, out of I don't know how many hundreds of millions of people are on YouTube doing these kinds of things, and whatever it is, you find someone, to follow. Sometimes some of these things are episodic, whatever the case may be, and and that's life today. That's television. That's information. It's way better than social media, which I've abandoned, as I mentioned in yesterday's program, and many others. But if there's anyone out there that happens to see this under the live category, feel free. I have the chat on. Just feel free to say hello and where you're from. If not, that's okay too. I'm not, I don't care either way. It's just sometimes nice to know someone accidentally happens upon a thing like this while it's live. I do this regularly, so it's going to be a regular fixture on my show. You'll find me doing that. You'll find me clearing my throat because I usually do these things early in the morning, and I usually do the old thing with the mustache, just like some people would do to cover their mouth when they cough. I just do this. It's just my thing. My cat's down here. I don't know if I can pick him up. Hey, you want to say hi? No. He got away. Sometimes he just walks back and forth. So real life TV, but it's not contrived. It's not the Truman Show, And I think the idea is that I think the networks are really scared. I have traffic going by here at this time of the morning. I guess it's people going to work, and even though it's a 25-mile-an-hour zone in a neighborhood, as I've said many times, they just seem to be speeding by like at 50 some miles an hour. And even though we pay taxes, you don't seem to ever. I've never heard one siren or anyone getting a ticket for speeding in this residential zone. Just got to notice I have to do this thing. I'm opening a store. I'm not personally, but I'm helping a friend out and like doing the opening part of their setting up the morning because he's out of town. It's a thing I do. I got 9 more. I'm counting the days down. I have 9 more days of doing that. I have to go out into the cold, tromp through the snow, do this thing, and then make it back. But, getting back to this idea of, how communications has really changed. And I just think, I was talking to someone yesterday afternoon who's in the process of getting their master's degree in marketing, something like that. And I was explaining, I'm saying, everything you're learning, I mean, since I've been in advertising since I've been 18, in one way, shape, or form, and I've done it in, major markets. And the New York City, I guess would be the ultimate, having been involved in that in New York City. So I said, advertising and marketing has, changed drastically. And as this new paradigm shift, takes place in the media, it's going to, the problem is the camera is up here. And if I look right now, if I look up, it's more like I'm looking at the audience. Whereas if I just look straight away, it looks like I'm not making eye contact with you. It's a very bad design. So to you YouTube, thousands of people sipping your Starbucks coffee and having your meetings about whatever you're having meetings about, you need to alter this interface. What you want to do is you want to raise the image of the person, like me, who's doing the live broadcast, and you want it to be higher, and you could, it's not necessary that you put it central to the screen, because, in this case, I've at least moved it to the, to the right. So it's more directly under the little green light, where the camera is. But not doing that is, it just makes people talk, it's like, because it's a chore to look into the camera, and even my face. Look, you see, I would be leaning up in order to make eye contact, and it's much more effective in communicating to actually, to feel as if the person's looking more at you. So I just want to point that out. And there's not enough people that, this is a ramble and a rant, and sometimes they start off weird and goofy, and you have to get used to the face and the lighting and all that kind of crazy stuff. But I've noticed, I watch, because I create content for myself. So I'll watch this later on today, and I'll actually enjoy it. And not in some way as if I'm, some kind of guy who's self-critical or vain. It's just more or less like just the technology, tweaking the technology. And I make these comments open, hopefully that someone will, involved in these things, will like catch on to this. So yeah, it's like, they call it the GUI, the graphic user interface. Okay, GUI. It's a term you don't hear used that much. Used to hear it in the early days of the internet, when there would be a lot of people trying to learn HTML and build their own websites and all that kind of stuff. But you don't hear talk about that now. It's almost like they, it's like it's that kind of language is hidden vernacular, trade secrets almost, so that these people could justify getting paid six figures for stuff that, anyone could do, a trained chimp. Code writing is not a very complicated thing at all. It's very repetitive, and there's just a series of commands and structure, sentences, lines of code that you use to do various things. And there are simple charts and things that you actually remember, like, what a color, to change a color of something, to make a font, particular style of a font, to make it bold, to have things, flush left, flush right, centered, to have an image, to have a rollover, all these things you see on these template. Everything's a template now. And this will all tie into everything, because, it just has to do with the shift of the way the technology is. But, it's like WordPress or these companies that you can pay X amount of money to if you have a small business or something, and they take care of your website, different things like that. The lighting here is a little bit bright and kind of distorted. So don't even know if I need to have my this particular monitor on. We'll see if that alters the lighting.
Good morning.
But it is kind of fun that I can do that. I have two computers set up here. Let's see if I can take a picture of it, and I'll give you the idea of what's going on. But we'll get into all this. So I'm going to literally take a picture to give you an idea of the setup. And then I'm going to put the photo, just show you the photo. Actually, that's all I'll do. That's even easier yet. And I don't even have to transfer. So let's see if we can avoid the glare. But if you could grab, I just lost my ACE rewards card. That little gnome, well, I didn't want to do that. Anyway, I'm here. This very bright white thing here is the other computer on the other side. And so this is the YouTube live setup. And then I've got a monitor over there. Of course, keyboards down below. And so what that allows me to do is that, like I say, all I have to do is click on this.
Good morning.
And, and then that comes into play. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quit out of this actually and shut it down. I don't know what that's going to do to our lighting, but I'm sure it'll have some sort of effect on it. I had a thumb drive in there that I transferred some files over with. No one's discovered this yet, I see. This lighting might even be a little bit better. Let's see if we can move this chair up a little bit more in the frame. Yeah, so what do I mean about, this paradigm shift? And, I was talking about this marketing idea. Well, okay. Well, at one point, if you go back to like the 90s, and the 90s was the peak of television, cable television. If you really think about it, that's when suddenly all these channels existed, and the networks were really in trouble because, the internet was in its infancy, so only geeks like me, and people in government and academia, science people working at scientists had emails. Like I had an email account in 1985. I forget I'm trying to think of the name of the company. It was like, what was it called? Something Link. It wasn't Earthlink. They didn't come around. I had them. They were one of the earlier people that were. I was one of the early adopters of Earthlink. That was like 90s. But in the 80s, there was another something Link. And I talked about, I think it was yesterday or one of my earlier videos, about a movie I was producing in Australia. And so the guy who was directing for me, he was computer literate. We went to college together. And my brother had a business, and so he had computers in his business. And I got both these guys in Easy. I think it was called Easy Link. I may be wrong, but whatever. It doesn't exist today, and if it does, I don't know. But we were we were just using those, old fashioned Macs, the cube, the cube Macs, or I think my brother had some people had PCs. I actually have one of the old Macs here, and the original ones. And you just had this modem, and I think it was like they used to measure it in baud, and I think it was 300 baud. And that might have actually been fast in 1985, 300 baud. And you just plugged it into your phone line, and there was that strange noise that maybe people today don't know, but it was like this screechy thing till it made, it used to make the connection. And people were sending emails, back. I was sending emails to Australia. I was sending emails, over multiple states. And so people think, this chair I have, it keeps sliding down, the control on it, but this is TV anyway, real life. So if you're, if you're somebody who's followed me or just starting to follow me or discovering this even weeks from now or months from now, you'll find it, in the summertime, I'm doing these slow-mo videos. And if you go back of my garden, I'm giving you my life, live. That's what this is. Tony Caravan Live. I used to have a radio show in the 90s called Tony Caravan Live. And that thing had morphed from everything from lounge music to investigating, these various, some people call conspiracy theories and all that kind of crazy stuff. But it's conversation. It's my life online. And that's why I say this is the future of TV. This is TV. And whether you're interested in this channel or not, it doesn't matter. You can change the channel. And that's why I wanted to get back into the 90s. So in the 90s, yeah, you had this, the geeks, we had the internet, and we were building weird websites and stuff. I had graphics on my website, and I remember people looking, because a lot of people didn't. They were people had what was called BBSs, and they were bulletin board services. And I don't know if you've ever seen in an old movie, that movie War Games. I think it was called War Games with that kid. And the idea was that, you used to have this green and yellow printer paper, and everything was like ones and zeros, or the words would, sometimes they'd make an image out of by having the letters, the spaces between the letters would form a face or an image or words or the title of something. And that's what the internet was like in its infancy for a lot of people. They were these BBSs. And they had that, and they weren't really there was no GUI, as I said. There were no graphical user interfaces. At least people hadn't figured out how to do it. And I figured out how to do that, and I had a background. And that was, a lot of people, in those days, there weren't many of us on the internet. And it was like a family almost. You knew people, and you talked. And there was no such thing as spam, because there were no people didn't the sleazy con artist, make a quick buck type of folks. They weren't even aware of this thing. This was pretty much in like I said, the scientific, computer and governments, communities. People using this were, that's who were doing this. Plus, computers were pretty costly too. So you were either to build one yourself, and then you had to wire and figure out all this stuff, because there was no guide and everything was new. So, I remember laboring how to do certain things, and then you'd figure it out. And they had there was something I was a part of called, at that point, the HTML Guild. It was just a kind of loosely formed group of people, and you would discover something and you would share it, or someone would see, they'd look at your website and say, how'd you do that? And you just shared, you said, okay, here's what I did. Here's the piece of code, try it. I remember one time, and this was in the early 90s, some woman was trying to set up had a jewelry store or something like that, and she wanted to have her stuff where you clicked on the item and it could pop up and show you a bigger version of it with more information. And I had figured out the code on how to make a pop-up. It really wasn't in a book. There wasn't really that kind of stuff. So that was enjoyable, and it was fun. It's like people who mess around with ham radios and stuff. A lot of ways it was like that. And the early webcasting type of things that very, very few people, there was literally a handful of people doing that. I was one of them. That was pretty much like that. It was like the early days of radio or ham radio. But simultaneous to that, so I'm trying to say it's hard for someone to imagine that they're not. So in effect, there was no internet in the 90s as far as the general public was concerned. Just like there were no computers, in the 80s as far as the general public was concerned. There were people playing with a Commodore computer or, using video gaming type of devices to play Pong and, but then people were, if you wanted to really play video games, you primarily were going to arcades, and that's where the software developers were doing it with things you would stand up next to. They were the follow-up to the analog pinball machines, right? Which were great. Man, I wish I had a pinball machine. There's a company that I think is not too far from me. I mean, it's close enough that I could probably, if I had the money, and it would be, the waste of several $1,000s, maybe $5,000. They refurbish pinball machines. I would love to get a pinball machine. It's like I'm going to do it. I'm just going to have to win the lottery though, to get one. So getting back to the beginning of this conversation, I'm already almost halfway through this video, is that TV, you had a remote control and you had a set-top box, and because there were no cable, they didn't really have cable ready TV at that point. They were just starting to come but cable, because of the cable box, and so you sat there with this remote and you had, it's like that song, I don't know, 200 stations and nothing on, but that's not the way it really was. You had a couple hundred stations. You were starting to get that, where you had 120 stations or something like that. And everything was on. There was like, you'd almost want to skip work. I would, or stay up all night. I can remember like just watching movies till 3 a.m. and having to get up to go to work at like 7 or 8 and being groggy the whole day because I just couldn't turn the TV off. Things like AMC, the American Movie Classics or whatever it was called, it still exists, but it's a commercial, station now. It has commercials. They show movies and they have shows. But back then it was commercial free. Like it was like Turner Classic Movies, TCM. No, there were no commercials. There were IFC, Independent Film Channel. That's what IFC was stood for. They had no commercials, and they were showing like real independent film. Like Jim Jarmusch, and it was like really you were discovering this. There were a lot of stations like that, and even the channels like the Discovery Channel and those other channels, they really were intense. The content was very, very interesting, very, you could say educational or whatever. But I mean, whatever you were looking for, you could find on the internet, on television, and you just had one simple remote control, and you could have your favorites and channels. Now you think about now how much that's changed, and this gets into computing, cloud computing, and also all of these, everything that how these money hungry, greedy bastards, for lack of a better word, destroyed television, the internet, and entertainment and information as we knew it. So at a time when there was an information explosion in the late 80s and early 90s, in other words, information was something that the average person now had access to. Prior to that, you had to be someone who spent, a bookworm, as they used to say, someone who would go to the library and sit there for hours and hours and search through these stacks for, classic books or something. Or you had to be a student of literature or something like that. Or have a family, I guess a lot of families had encyclopedias, the Funkin' Wagnalls. We had the Britannica. I was lucky, my father was into learning a lot of stuff. So he bought the Encyclopedia Britannica library. But you had to be somebody that was really interested in learning things and spend time. But the average person, that wasn't the average person. The average person was just, happy-go-lucky, didn't care and wasn't really aware of this information explosion that was going on. But what happened was the puppeteers, the corporatocracy, the people that were wanted, the consumerism society folk, they started to look at this and they got their dirty hands in it and they started messing with it and buying up things. And like I say, there was a period of time from the late 80s to say the mid 90s, almost towards the late 90s, but the best time would have been the late 80s to like the mid 90s, maybe till 90, maybe until 97, 98 or so. Before they start sending out all those AOL, you've got mail CDs to everybody in the entire country, and then there was a movie about it, and then it hit the news, and then suddenly everybody had email, and then spam was created, and everything was commercial, and these pop-ups, instead of them being something to show you a larger illustration of something, they were pop-up ads, and the whole experience was just becoming warped, distorted, and perverted. But that time, was, to me, was the best time. And you still had receivers. Apple Computer was really cool back then. Their computers were incredible. What they did graphically, they had audio and video cards and things that were far superior to the PC side. You could do it on the PC side, but if you really had to take apart the PCs, and it was a lot of coding and a lot of going out of your way to do something that that was basically standard in the Apple computer. So in other words, you just had an audio in jack. You just had it just worked. The graphical user interface was there. And things like the basic programs, Mac Draw, Mac Paint, Mac Write, those kind of things were they came with your computer. You didn't have to buy extra software. And companies like Adobe you know, and Aldus was the first one, Aldus PageMaker, which eventually I think Adobe bought it and then discontinued it and then created InDesign. There was something called Corel Draw that I was on like a team in Philly that was helping them test that on on a machine that output high resolution uh, film. But basically it was you process this paper that could be used to make so it turned it basically took desktop publishing from being printing out on a 300 DPI printer and allowed you to have high resolution graphics and even go straight to negative and they could use in the printing process to go to plate and actually publish. Because I had a background in printing. Lots of my family business was printing, so that's how I made it. That's why I was always able to travel wherever I wanted to, because I had a background in that. Could always get a job anywhere I wanted to. Just went to a print shop, and they usually hired me on the spot. Well, it wasn't even a question. It was like nobody. They just couldn't find some people like that. They used to call it. I think it goes back to the old newspaper days. Like they would call them journeymen. People who knew printing and publishing and that kind of thing, and you traveled around. And those were incredible times, and they were great times in the U.S. And it's not like I'm reminiscing and saying the good old days. No, it's not that. The good old days were actually the 60s and 70s. Those really were the good old days. That was the highest and best that our culture had achieved, because throughout all the turmoil that had gone on there, the upheaval of society, from the Vietnam War to the Civil Rights Movement and all that stuff, having made it through that, through the late 60s into the 70s, what came out on the other side was a really cool country and a cool lifestyle. And that's why the people today are so out of touch, because they've got these, as if they're some new civil rights movement or some new rights movements and things like that. It's like, man, 50 years ago, that stuff was all solved and we were all living together until you guys resurrected this hogwash. And yeah, there's injustice and all that kind of crazy stuff going on here and there, but these mainly because of the agent provocateurs that decided to try to take something out of an old playbook, some revolutionaries playbook from the 60s, 50s or 60s, and apply it today for their own political gain. It's just like the advertising industry stole from the old propagandists in Europe, that led to Nazism, because that's what that was. And that's what advertising basically became. Propaganda became advertising. And that's how this all ties in together. And so, it's like the best of times, worst of times, scenario. And so, yeah, the 90s, man, you could sit on your, easy chair in front of your TV, and it was a big TV, the TVs, had the cathode ray tubes in them. They weren't anything flat like they are today. And, you had a remote control, but man, you had a choice of so much. And it was 24/7. It was on, and it was great. And sometimes it almost seemed that the later at night, I guess because they figured the average, uneducated person or disinterested person, or the common man, the sheeple type of individual, let them watch the sitcoms or whatever. And then later it would be at night, and early in the morning was all the really good stuff. Like I said, independent film, intense documentaries, just good movies and good shows. Late night talk shows that weren't, stupidity, but they were like in-depth discussions and stuff like that. Got to get that caffeine. And so all that was co-opted. And pardon me. All that was co-opted by the late 90s, you know, and, you know, and then you had so it was the dot-com revolution. I'm just giving you live history for, you know, people that just aren't aware of this. And for others, it's just a way of reminiscing. And it was co-opted. You had the dot-com revolution. Everybody was making a buck, selling website domain names. The dot-coms were selling for $1 million some and stuff like that. And then it all busted in the year 2000. And then 2001 came along, 9/11. Of course, you had Y2K, that scare. And so it was back to back, you know, craziness. And then the country changed. And in the 21st century, you had suddenly the iPod and the iPhone. And then after that, like I said, you know, eventually social media. And then people became, you know, then these things, the Black Mirror, you know, type of idea. And like, oh, me precious. And people couldn't live without this. And they sit there and they, you know, thumb texts and, you know, and snap photos and show what they ate and influencers and all of this nonsense. And so, you know, and so the power, the puppeteers of the world, the corporatocracy seized upon this, if not didn't, you know, helped bring it about, right? You know, which is something to seriously consider. And destroyed, you know, so that was like the second destruction of a beautiful period of time. The first destruction was that the late 70s was a beautiful time in America, a beautiful time in America. And then the other really cool time was the late 80s into the 90s, you know. Of course, they were starting their Gulf War, the neocons, neoliberals, you know, military industrial complex, warmongers, you know, type of people that's when they started these endless wars and for oil and stuff. And now the funny thing is, you know, I just saw an article today, you say all this ties together, that in like Germany, you know, it's very cold, you know, despite this talk of, you know, they try to resurrect, you know, they, like I said, they turn propaganda into advertising. They turn, you know, beautiful things that, you know, a civil rights movement and people getting along, and then they resurrect it and they use techniques to try to like destroy the good things that happened in the past. Well, another one is, so Germany, you know, had a big push on renewable energy, you know, solar panels and windmills. In fact, you know, they manufacture, you know, Germany's a big manufacturing company. I think most people know that. And Europe has been having very hard winters. Like, despite what you hear on the media, which I'd turn it off, but I mean, I keep an ear and an eye out. Well, you know, the world isn't getting warmer. You know, there's no such thing as global warming. The climate change is, you know, actually we're just in a cyclical cooling period, solar minimum. You know, we're heading into like a 400-year cycle that's also part of like longer cycles that we have. I mean, like I say, the natural state of the Earth is we're this planet is mostly has spent its history covered with ice, you know, more so than having these periods where, you know, we humans can survive in vast swaths of you know, the continents. So yeah, it's cold. It's colder in, you know, Europe. You know, for years now, it's been having very severe winters. And I was watching this, reading this article and looking at some videos and some photos of these totally snow-covered solar panels and windmills that can't even move because they're frozen because of the cold weather. And so what Germany's doing is buying coal, is using coal, buying fuel from Russia and nuclear power from France so that they can make it through the winter. And but meanwhile, while I'm telling you this story, this is a factual story, and this is not just Germany, this is widespread. Okay, it's cold in the US, Midwest US, and so these fossil fuels that we have, these organic, this organic tar that comes out of the earth that we process and turn into oil and gas that we use to run our farming equipment, cranes, emergency vehicles like fire trucks and ambulances. Like I always talk about excavating equipment, the machinery that fixes highways and bridges. None of all these heavy megaton vehicles and heavy machinery that just simply cannot and never will run on batteries. And if they did, the batteries would have to be charged so frequently because of the demand, that this equipment uses, that it would be impossible to have anything done in remote locations, because you would have to literally, how could you fix a bridge somewhere out on an interstate highway where there was no place to charge the batteries? You're in the middle of placing a girder up or fixing or repairing something, and the thing loses its charge. And then what do you have to wait? Hours and hours and hours, assuming there was a way to charge it until you could continue it. It's one of those like things that's so common sense, but it just shows that these people inside the Beltway and these bureaucrats in the UN, IPCC, in Brussels, the EU type people, that Greta and all these other people, how totally out of touch with reality they are. It's like not only do they not know what a hammer and nail is, but they don't know what heavy equipment is. But you could be darn sure that if there was some fire or something on the 22nd floor of one of their high rises, that they would want that hook and ladder to be able to get up there and put it out. However, that hook and ladder runs on fossil fuels and always will. And in a time right now where they're talking about where we have collapsing infrastructure worldwide, but really seriously in the US, this is no time to reduce fossil fuels and close pipelines and stuff. We need to increase it, like I'm saying, 4 times, maybe 10-fold, seriously, in order for our society to be able to survive, to maintain our cities, to maintain our bridges, to maintain our emergency equipment, to keep the hospitals going. You see these movies and there's like, the power goes out in a hospital in some horror movie or something, or somebody cuts the power line and then the generator goes on. Well, what do you think the generator runs on? And then, if the generator goes out, and then that's it. And then that's end of civilization. It's one thing to care about pollution and fresh water and fresh air, clean air and all that stuff. But, they don't really care about that. It's like Botox facelift Carrie saying, well, I had to take my private jet to the, to the climate conference, right? And you look at the climate conference and it's like more private jets, in one area than you ever see, anywhere. It's just literally insane. Excuse me. Real life, real TV. So, so think about that. So, so these, I don't know, they're just, this old world order, this king system, these feudalism, the puppeteers of the corporatocracy, that have you, you know, as cattle on their tax slash consumerism farms, and they're only concerned about themselves. And there's only thousands of them. Like I said this before. In any given country, there's like only several thousand of these really super rich, what they call the ruling elite. Even in the United States, it's only in a few thousand of them. That's why that whole capital thing was so blown out of proportion, because that was as if somebody stormed the castle, and that's like the king going, "Oh my God, this is crazy." It's like, yeah, there, you got a couple thousand people trying to tell 330 million people that they can no longer walk down the street, or they can no longer go to the corner pub and have a drink because of a flu bug that's like already coming up on 2 years old. It's like flus don't last that long. And now they're talking about mutations. Well, that's the whole idea about the common cold. That's why there's never been a cure for the common cold. And coronavirus, which what COVID stands for, which is funny, they try to say, well, it's novel. If you look on the back of your Lysol can or your Clorox wipes, and if you could find an old one in a garage somewhere from, 10 years ago, it'll say one of the things that it kills is human coronavirus. People don't even know that. Yeah, it's coronavirus. Yeah, and those things mutate all the time. That's why there's no cure for the common cold. They're just bugs. The idea is we have immune systems. We're androids. We're bioelectric machines. You just take in, vitamin D3 or get sunlight, zinc, and cruciferous vegetables, antioxidants, things that help fight off cancers and heart disease. Eat well. Be exposed to all these various germs so that you build immunity. And that's what herd immunity really is about. It's about, it's about the human body basically being exposed to things. And this isn't Ebola. They've got this people scared of this thing like it's like a flesh-eating disease or something. More people are dying every year from heart attacks and cancer and other causes than this thing, And you go to the CDC website, look at the major causes of deaths, and you don't see anybody freaking out over heart disease or cancer. I said this the other day. Because that's big business, because they have drugs that they can make billions of dollars on. Big pharma, the lobbyists in Washington. Same with cancer. They have these big cancer centers, that rake in billions and billions of dollars. So you don't see them trying to come up with vaccines and cures for that. No, they just have things to keep people, stabilize people, keep people alive. Give them radiation treatments, which is ridiculous, nuking people, and then until they eventually die, till they could suck as much money out of their insurance company or out of their private savings until they die, or warehouse them in these nursing homes or care facilities, and have them sign over their house and all their belongings, so they could take everything this person has, and then once that's gone, then they're just, that's like they're put out the pasture, and then they don't care. I have a mother who's 87 years old, who's in a care facility, and it's not like, and it's not a cheap place, and she says it's like a prison, it's a prison. And she has an apartment. It's not, like I said, it's not a nursing home. And her, and she's still very, has very clear-headed. We have conversations. I talk to her, for a couple hours every week. You can't visit. They're locked up. They're locked in. They're prisoners, prisoners. just because they're old and they're spending, and they're spending their own money to be locked up and kept away from their family and friends and loved ones and all that. So we have a very warped society right now, and advertising. And I just want to finish this off. This is running longer than I want, but I want to continue with what I started out with, and all this background ties together into this. Is that so? You went from an idealistic society, which we actually had. The first one was like in the 70s, where we finally had gotten over all of that stuff. In other words, civil rights movement was a success. Feminist movement was a success. Vietnam War, Nixon ended the Vietnam War, was over. Okay, there wasn't even a draft there for a while, and so we had this peace and love and classic R&B music, and nobody was there was no we were over those assassinations and all that crazy stuff that went on. And we had reached this time where we were at peace, and then these neocons and neoliberals started to come in, and the Wall Streeters, and then they started to mess with things, saying, okay, we can't have and it took them a while. It took them the 80s to really start messing with things. But the geeks like me and many others, we pulled technology through and improved life in the late 80s into the 90s and brought forth this whole thing, the way I'm communicating with you now. But these people, then they came back and got their dirty hands back into it, the advertising people. And then we got into the 2000s and the Patriot Act and all the craziness and the endless wars and all this horrible stuff that went on, right? And now, now that they've got people, addicted, through dopamine hits and through social media, and like attached to these black mirror, magic mirror phones, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, they're preciouses, right? I canceled my cell phone service. I still have them. They're older phones. When I was in business, I needed a phone because in case I got email, if I was running one of these, magazines, an advertiser or somebody had an event and I was out in the pub, having a drink, so I could like get that last minute ad in or whatever, I'm just a guy trying to make a living, but I can't, once I was no longer doing that, I don't do that anymore. And so I just said, the heck with it. I'm not paying, $100 a month for a cell phone service. I'm not paying for TV service. I don't want to watch this. They ruin TV. It's like 6 companies. They own all the stations. It's like, I don't know the exact breakdown. I'm not going to bother, dealing with it. But it's like, you take like an ABC or a CBS, they also own like your various Discoveries, History Channel, whatever. They bought them all up. It's all one big ridiculous thing. And now they're getting their dirty hands into the internet, and they're all tied into big tech and all that kind of crazy stuff, So it's nutty. It's real nutty what's happening. But the really nutty thing that's happening on top of all that, the total cluster, is what I was getting that ties into everything I'm saying, is the cloud. All right. And so now, whereas in the 90s, I could be sitting back in my cool chair with my TV and my single remote that does everything, and I could watch a couple hundred channels and just be mesmerized, and on the day off go like, oh, this is cool, right? I could watch and learn all this stuff. Now you have like, I'm looking right now, I don't have TV, but I have some various little set-top boxes, like I have I have a Fire Stick because I have Amazon Prime because you get free delivery. So I have a Fire Stick so I could watch YouTube on TV, right? And every now and then I'll get Netflix, but I won't keep Netflix. Like I'll just get it for a month if there's like a good series on, which is rare and rarer now. I'm on the verge of I have like 10 days to cancel Netflix, so I don't have, which I'm going to do. But I had a set top box for for some cloud TV there for a little while because I wanted there was some obscure stuff on there. But you got to turn on, so you got the remote to turn on your HD TV, right, and control the volume and the input, right? Because if you have like a Apple TV, or I have an old Apple TV box, or if you have a Fire Stick, you have to like input, HDMI, 1 or HDMI 2, right? So you have the app. So you have the Apple controller, which I don't have in front of me right now, but basically you have the television. This like turns on my television, all right, and then I have to select on here the input. So, and then this would be like for one of the set-top boxes. And then if I had the Apple, then I would have my Apple one. So I have like 3 remote controls, and I don't even have regular TV. And when I had Direct TV, then I had the Direct TV controller. And then sometimes you can program them. Yeah, you could program this one to turn your TV on and control the volume up and down, but it still won't do one other thing. So you still got to keep it handy because, in case you want to change, it wouldn't help. You couldn't change the input, for example. So, you got 4. At one point, I had 4 or 5 next to my chair. I had 4 or 5 remote controls, and now, they've got Hulu, right? Or people get these Roku boxes, or even the Fire Stick TV, or even Apple TV, which is like more of an app now than actually a bot. The old hockey puck thing, which I still have one of. And there's many others. And so it's like, okay, am I going to watch? I've got Hulu, which has commercials, not as many. Netflix, which is useless. I mean, has gotten so much into some kind of crazy social justice, weird. Let's see how bizarre a cast we could put together, and see how much time. Let's see if we could have 40 minutes of the plot based on some kind of, pushing some sort of thing on us, and maybe 10 minutes of the story, of the sci-fi story, right? But I'm not going to even mention the names. Them. It's like, and it's all cloud service, and everyone's got a fee. And some fees, like you could get basic Apple TV Plus for maybe it's $4.97 plus taxes. I don't know, 5 something. Hulu, might be in that range or a little bit higher. But then if you want Stars or HBO, that could be as high as $15 a month. So look at it. So here you are, and and there's no one-stop place. That's the whole thing. You can't. It's like, so it's not as if you say, well, I just watched HBO. I got HBO. It's like, yeah, but then they don't have Stars has American Gods on it or something. So you want to see Stars, or Hulu has this, and you can get this on the Roku box now. The Apple TV has this show on it, but that show's exclusive to Apple. So if you want to watch, their 4 or 5 programs, you have to they're only available on Apple TV app. And it's the same with software, Adobe. If you want to use Adobe Photoshop, one of the reasons I mentioned yesterday, the reason I'm using Live and experimenting with this, and this is just an experiment. I think in the coming weeks I'm going to figure out how to do some cooler things with this. But this is raw. anyone who made it this far, and I don't see anybody on my live chat. So it's like, nobody's watching. So, but it's this cloud service. So Adobe, so in other words, if I wanted to do this with Adobe, put together Adobe Premiere to edit videos, use Photoshop, use InDesign, use any of these other programs, I was paying them. I don't do it anymore because I don't publish the magazines. I don't publish that kind of stuff. I used to host a lot of websites for people, and things. Now it's like a handful I do it for, because my costs are so low right now that I barely need anything to live. And that's my advice. I've given that advice yesterday and in previous videos and all that kind of stuff. Excuse me. I think today's National Pizza Day. I just got a notice of that. But I was paying them $55 a month. And then I was paying through some, I don't know, Yahoo or somebody else where I was hosting websites. I was paying them every 3 months, like around $50 or something, 40 or $50. And again, if I wanted to have a Netflix, or if I wanted to watch a Stars, or if I wanted to watch Westworld on HBO or something like that, I'd have to rent that app, or that their cloud service or whatever. And everything's individual and it's piecemeal. And they're nickel and diming people, but I wouldn't say nickel and diming. That's the wrong expression. They're $10 and $20 people to death. And it's fine if you have a job where you're making six figures, drinking Starbucks coffee, making an interface that's primitive, a GUI that could be way, way better. There should be things here, insert image, picture in picture, superimpose image now, superimpose title. They've got room. There's all this blank space on the side of this thing. Superimpose title, picture in picture, add image. They could do that. Split screen. Why aren't they doing it? Well, they're too busy drinking coffee, planning the next protest. Like I say, protest. What are you protesting? Exercise in futility, man. Give up. Everything is wrong. Buy one of my shirts. Listen to my, get my book. Listen to my music. It tells all the stories. So, that's their game. You're cattle on their tax consumer farms. And they just want you, so you become technically a wage slave. So they'll raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Do you ever wonder why? Because apart from the fact, there's two reasons why they want to do that. The first reason is they want to put small businesses out of business. See, if you have a small company, you simply can't afford, say you had a donut shop, all right? And you have 5 employees. And you are paying them, say, $7 or $8 an hour, say $7.50 an hour or something like that, which isn't really all that bad of a wage. I don't know, let's just look here. So say you had 5 full-time employees, so 7.5 times 40. All right, that's $300 a week, $1,200 a month. Okay. By the way, I live on less than that now, and I own a house. My taxes, insurance, and mortgage is less than $200 a month, and I just paid my other bills, my electric, my gas, my internet, and everything else, and I still have $400 some dollars, to do with this month. So. That's living the life. And and like I said, I have a decent place and I grow my food. I have a garden out back, and I'm not living in the boonies either. And most people go well, $1,200 a month. I pay that just rent alone. I had relatives who were living in New York still, moved out. I think eventually, I think they moved out. People don't keep, since I got off Facebook, it's like you lose touch with people, but it's like, I'm not going on Facebook, and so, they were paying like $3,000 or $4,000 a month for an apartment. Imagine that. So it's the idea of you're a wage slave. So what I was trying to say is, so you get this donut shop as an example, and you were paying $300 a week to an employee, which, like I say, is a person can live on. All right, it's not a lot, it's a part-time job, but if you have a roommate, all right, and between the two of you, you're making about $2,500 a month. You can live. I've done it. You can live a fairly comfortable life, and you can still go out and, go out to the bars and party and do stuff, and probably even have enough to go on a summer 2-week summer vacation. You don't have all the luxuries of life, but guess what? That's another thing. You watch these movies and TV shows, and it's like they show everyone living in these, palatial apartments and houses. And the reality is, that's not real life. That's not, you just get yourself a house, get yourself an apartment, there's decent places in town, fairly safe and all that. You don't need, this idea of consumerism. So anyway, so the small businessman now has double his costs in employee expenses. So he has to raise the price of double the price of his donuts, or maybe increase his donuts by, I don't know, maybe 33% or something weird like that. Well, people are going to go like, man, yeah, I kind of like those donuts. And the guy who has a $600,000 a year job might still come in and get his apple fritters. But the average person that was buying it, coming in and buying a half dozen donuts and taking them to work or taking them home for the fam, isn't going to be shopping there anymore. And he's going to go out of business. Or it's somebody who has a small boutique or some other kind of store, does some kind of thing. And so what happens is, who picks up the slack? Walmart, right? Walmart. The big stores, the big box stores. And so, so all these small little restaurants and these pubs and stuff, so they all go out of business. Main Street, and all these employees lose their jobs, right? Better to have, you and your roommate bringing in about, $2,600 or $2,400 a month, and being able to carve out a decent life and have a house party and go on vacation, and, go out and drink and meet people and get a boyfriend, a girlfriend, and buy yourself some new shoes and, a top and different things now and then, have enough money to pay your smartphone bill, or whatever. Now you're out of work, right? Because small business is closed. And you top that with this crazy ass, lockdown, eternal lockdown. Okay. And who's making the money? Amazon, Walmart, Target. These big companies have made record profits over the past year and a half. Everybody's just ordering online. It's going to be delivered to your house, right? Post office is running a deficit. Taxpayers are funding Amazon's Prime second-day free delivery. And that's their goal, and that's what's going on. And so you have a choice. You could either, and that's why you have these people who work two family, the husband and wife work, or the boyfriend, girlfriend, both slave. Some people have two jobs. Some single moms have 2 or 3 jobs. That's a reality. And that's all because of this advertising and marketing and forcing this on you. You must have this. You must have this. And don't forget, you need your little pet. Your little pet. Me precious. I must have me precious. Forget that thing. Yeah, so that's the game they're playing, you know, and you got to wake up to it. You got to wake up to it because things are coming down now, you know. They're turning us into a feudal system. You know, the corporatocracy is in charge. And if you're still playing petty politics and watching TV in day 2 of the trial or whatever the heck's going on and getting caught up in that whole little circus, media circus. Remember, the media is only in business to sell commercials and advertisements. That's what they're in business for. I was a general manager of a radio station. The goal of that station was, you know, I wanted to create the greatest programming we could possibly. It wasn't a PBS station. It was a commercial station. So I did my damnedest. I even did my own show. And we played some of the best music in town. Went up in the ratings. But the whole idea was, you know, we needed to sell commercial time so that we could pay the salaries and I could get decent DJs and, you know, and we can buy programming that we needed to buy. You know, people don't understand that. That's what's going on. It's a game. It's not, they don't care about you. These announcers, they pretend, oh, I'm involved in this cause. And they're millionaires. Anyone you see on TV, all right, is making $1 million minimum. All right. Some of these people you see, even on these cable channels, they're making like $10 million salaries a year. And they're pretending they care about you, the common worker, whatever. No, they don't care about you. They're playing head games with you. In fact, they're pushing these things that are going on right now are basically going to cause you to lose your job. No, it's all a game. Two sides of the same coin. Anyway, pardon me. Took me too long to do this. I wonder if I still have. No, it just says live. But go and I'm just going to give you a thanks for watching. Check the link below. So my idea is I'm going to do these things on a fairly regular basis. I can't guarantee I'll do them every day, but read my book, check my book. Look, but I have 100 some videos up there, and I've got all this music out there. Listen to some of the stuff. The newer stuff, like I said before, is better than the older stuff. That's just the nature of things. All right. But watch some of my other videos where I get more in depth to some of a lot of this stuff, and think about it, and think about living your life, and make sure you're not being taken advantage of. And remember, you're free speech. If Twitter basically curtails free speech, get off of Twitter, and guess what happens? Suddenly you have free speech, because if they're curtailing it, you're not on Twitter, then you have free speech, right? I have free speech right now, and I'm no longer on Twitter, so I have free speech. If I was on Twitter, I wouldn't have free speech, right? I'm on YouTube. Hey, abide by the terms of service. I'm abiding by the terms of service. I'm on YouTube. But really, it's TV. It's modern day TV. And there are even alternatives to this now. Anyway, have a great day, a great Wednesday, hump day. Like I said, I think it's International Pizza Day or something weird like that. So get yourself some pizza. And I will talk to you very soon. Take the old glasses off. Your eyes look so different when you do that. Anyway, cheers. All the best. Get a shirt. Everything you know is wrong, or you don't know what you don't know. Check out that link to my site, and I'll talk to you real soon. Thanks again for watching.